Hey, thanks for stopping by my blog. I'm Cam Dunlap. As you know, I wanted to talk for a few minutes about condos. Condos concern me in this market. There's some issues with regard to your ability to resell them easily, and there's some issues with regard to funding them. Let's first look at the fundamental problem, and that is simply supply and demand. There are too many of them out there for the buyer pool, so the supply is exceeding the demand, and there's a couple of big reasons for that. If you think about it, just a few years ago, there was a frenzy of condos being built, all over the place, where there was bidding going on, and you had to be the highest bidder to get the condo in the building that wasn't even going to, start construction for another year. And a lot of those complexes did get built, and a lot didn't. Some people lost money, and it was a function of speculation. Another issue that drove the supply way up was condo conversions. You probably heard about apartment complexes, apartment buildings that were condoed or went condo, and it was a great way for the owners to cash out big time. I mean, if you have an apartment complex where you've paid $22,000, $25,000 a unit, and you go through the process of a condo conversion, and it involves attorneys, and it's a process, but obviously it's doable. And then you turn around and sell those units for $75,000 or $100,000 a piece. Big paychecks for a lot of folks back, in the 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 range. And so what that means is there was a lot of new inventory brought into the marketplace, and now in a buyer's market, where buyers are few and far between, those condos are just sitting. And it reminds me so much of the early 90s when I got involved in the business. You probably know I've been at this since 1993. And I remember when I first got involved, there were lots and lots of condos sitting on the market, empty, that you could buy for pennies on the dollar that they had traded for just a year or two or three before. And it was probably close to a 10-year span before they really started to recover. And so I think we're a ways off from condos recovering, and I think that you should be careful if you're planning to flip properties when it comes to condos. Now, single-family houses, awesome, going great. We're funding another deal today. We're funding deals left and right. But condos, you got to be careful of. Here's a personal situation, a personal story to kind of relate my concerns so that you get it. I funded a condo deal for a student client who had the B2C transaction lined up. It wasn't a same-day deal. It was going to be about a week or two. We needed to get the buyer's loan finalized, any final items like a second appraisal that needs to be done or updated after the date of transfer of the A to B, stuff like that. So anyway, it was going to be about a 2-week deal, maybe 3 weeks at the most. The buyer was all set. They were qualified. They had good income, debt-to-income ratios, assets, all of that. They were good to go. And at the 11th hour, the bank bailed out and refused to fund the deal for the C buyer because there were too many HOA dues unpaid, homeowners association dues unpaid. This particular complex had a number of empty units that were in limbo, in some stage of the foreclosure process, and so what was happening is the HOA dues were not being paid. And that made the C buyer's lender nervous, because if the homeowners association is underfunded, well, then the entire complex can suffer, and values as a result can suffer. And if you think about it like that, you really can't blame the lender for being nervous and then for bailing out on the deal. So the B2C died. Our client made an attempt to resell it to another buyer, and eventually, to make a long story short, it's now mine. And I'm now selling the condo, and so what that means is I've got to find a buyer, and I'm dealing with this firsthand. And to be honest, I'll be happy if I only lose $10,000 or $15,000 on the deal. There's another issue that banks take with condos, and by the way, none of this applies to single-family detached houses, so keep that in mind. That's all good. Condos, townhouses. So the other issue that applies, or that banks focus on, is the percentage of the units in the complex that are rented versus owner-occupied. And that, shouldn't be a difficult concept to grasp. I mean, if you have 10 units that are owner-occupied and 5 units that are rented, well, then, you could obviously see there's a certain percentage of those rented versus owner-occupied. Well, when that percentage exceeds a certain level, and it's an underwriting guideline that probably varies from bank to bank, but when that percentage of rented units exceeds a certain level, the bank will also refuse to fund. Neither of these are unusual, by the way. This isn't some new concern on the part of the banks out there. This has always been a concern of theirs. It's that the problem is at the forefront of what's going on right now because of this supply and demand problem and because of all the foreclosures, certainly. So, I'm facing that personally. I certainly didn't want to be in this position, but it's one of the risks that I take in funding deals, and so that's why we're, critical about deals as we go in. We want to make sure that I don't get stuck with the place, or that make sure that you don't get stuck with the place. So when you submit your deal to have us fund it, you might say, gee, they're being kind of critical, they're picking it apart. Well, we're doing that for your good and ours, so understand that. So I guess the moral of the story is with condos, I would suggest, if your intention is to flip, I would suggest you stay away. Now, it is doable, especially if you're dealing with a unit that needs a lot of work on the inside, and you can buy it dirt cheap and you can resell it to an investor, rehab, or landlord type buyer, and we can fund it on a same-day basis where your C buyer's coming in with cash, or a private lender, hard money, or maybe a partner. Okay, no problem. We're happy to continue funding condos on same-day deals where you buy and resell them on the same day. But any kind of long-term transaction, we're not going to be interested in condos for the foreseeable future, just because of the risk that's involved. And that's not only risk to me, but it's risk to you. So look at it this way. I'm watching out for you and me. Again, single-family houses, rocking and rolling. Stay focused on those. Remember, what works best are those entry-level homes in entry-level neighborhoods that sell to first-time home buyers. That type of financing is free-flowing right now and will be for the foreseeable future. I don't see that changing at all. Move-up homes, they're not so easy because the financing is not so free-flowing. So stick to those entry-level, single-family, detached homes, and I think you'll find the greatest success and the greatest income quickly. And bring those deals. Come on, we want to fund them. And if you're here and you're not familiar with the funding that we do, by golly, check it out. Head on over to CameronDirect.com and click the link that talks about how you can flip foreclosures with proof of funds and transactional funding. That's what we do, and we're changing the lives of a lot of folks. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this little video. I thank you very much for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.